Hello, welcome to Stories in Time. My name is Eloise Schottler. I'm your storyteller host. This is the season of the year where children are getting excited because they're going to be getting some gifts. And we're looking forward to bringing out some family traditions to celebrate the season. Now, my traditions run through Christmas, and I was thinking about them this morning. Christmas is a-coming, and the geese are getting fat. Pleased to put a penny in an old man's hat. If you haven't got a halfpenny, then God bless you. Now, that little Christmas ditty I learned from my grandmother, my father's mother, Louise Diggle. And she had learned it from her grandmother, Elizabeth Pyburn Gross, who was born in London, England, and came to the United States in 1859. Have we ever thought about where our traditions come from? Look at your own. Everybody look into their family and see, where does the tradition that you celebrate for any holiday come from? It's how things go from country to country and how we share where we come from. Now, one of the traditions when I was growing up in Charlotte, North Carolina, I went to a Donahue school, which was run by the Sisters of Mercy. And their tradition was to have a Christmas pageant. Yes, indeed. They had a Christmas pageant. And the year that I was in the 5th grade, Sister Mary John picked me to be the Mary in the Christmas tableau. Joseph on one side of the manger, the baby Jesus in his little manger bed in the center, and Mary on the other side. I was so thrilled. It was wonderful. And besides that, I was so relieved. It was going to be very simple to do that part. There were no speaking lines. I had nothing to remember. All I had to do was learn how to kneel there, look holy, and smile at the baby doll in the manger. It was a cinch. The hard job went to my mother. Mama had to come up with a costume for me so that I would be a proper Mary. I don't know where she learned how to do these things, but she did know how to make costumes. This one had her stumped for a while, and she thought about it, and then she pulled her Aunt Ida Schaffer Hall right out of her hat. Aunt Ida Schaffer Hall was an old lady. She was my mother's grandmother's youngest sister. And she said, "Eloise, have you ever heard of this Aunt Ida of mine?" And I said, No, I don't know who you're talking about, Mama. Well, she's old, and I bet that she still wears those old-timey, long-sleeved, white nightgowns that go all the way to the floor. That's what we need. So she called her up and told her what she needed and what she was doing. And Ida said, "Well, Louie, come on over. I have one. It's special, and you'll have to take really good care. But you come on over, come down to the house tomorrow night after you get off work, and I'll have it out for you to look at." And that's what we did. The next evening, after Mama got off work, she came home and picked me up, and we drove downtown to the place where Aunt Ida lived on South Tryon Street. Mama parked the car. The house looked almost deserted because you couldn't see the lights inside. But those bushes had grown up so tall around her front porch that you couldn't even see the windows or the light coming through them until you got right up on the porch near them or near the front door. She rang the bell, and Aunt Ida opened the door. Louie, Louie, I'm so glad to see you, honey. She was a little teeny woman. I was in the 5th grade and I wasn't all that tall. She was just barely taller than I was. And she had her hair pulled back straight. She parted it in the middle and then pulled it back tight around the sides of her face into a bun on the back of her head. Come on in, I want to show you this nightgown. And she sort of tottered across the room. Oh, she was old. I'll tell you, she was old. She picked up a box, took the lid off, and spread back the white tissue paper. There was a white nightgown, folded as pretty as you please. She reached up and held it up. It was almost as tall as she was. It went from her head all the way to the floor. Aunt Ida, this is perfect, perfect. She reached over and Mama held it over in front of me. Well, it was a little long, but it would work, and held out my arms. The sleeves would fit just fine. Only one thing, Louie. You have to be real careful with it. And I need it back just as soon as you're done. This is my best nightgown. I'm going to be buried in it. She said, what? She said she was going to be buried in it? Mama was still just looking at that dress, feeling of it. They were chatting about it. And she was going to be buried in that dress, and my mama was holding it up in front of me like I had to wear the dress that Aunt Ida was going to put on when she was dead. Well, I was having second thoughts, but not Mother. Mama folded it back up carefully and put it in the box, smoothed down the tissue paper, put the lid on, and tucked it up under her arm. We walked to the car, and I said, Mama, she's going to be buried in that dress. She said, isn't she going to look pretty? She'll look real nice, Eloise. That's a beautiful nightgown. Mama, you going to put that on me, and then she's going... That's so silly, honey. Don't think about it. We got in the car, and as we were riding home, she said, you know, seeing her, I went to her house one time when I was not much older than you are. And I thought she was real old then. Look at her now. She really is really, really old. But she did the sweetest thing, Eloise. When your sister Kathy was born, she called me on the phone. Louie, this is your Aunt Ida. I saw your mother at the grocery store, and she told me that your baby, that you've just had another daughter. That's your third daughter, isn't it? Yes, Aunt Ida, and they are beautiful children, I'll tell. She said, that's not the point. What have you done? What have you done that you are lucky enough to have 3 girls? What did you do to get to have 3 daughters? Well, what do you mean? Well, don't you know the other old saying? That a son's a son till he takes a wife. A daughter's a daughter all of her life. Louie, you are so lucky. What did you do? What did you do? I didn't have any daughters at all. Well, Mama put that onto me, that nightgown. It was awfully long, so she took some kind of a sash, pinned it around my waist, and pulled it up so that it didn't drag on the floor and get messed up. I mean, after all, Aunt Ida, you know, was going to be buried in it. And then she had to figure out she needed a veil. Well, she had an old curtain, and she got some Rit dye, boiled it on the stove, and dipped that curtain in and out of this blue dye. And you know, it was right pretty, especially after she ironed it so smooth, and she put it on my head, and I looked just like one of those nuns, except my veil was blue. And I knelt there as pretty as you please next to that manger, smiling at that baby doll. People said I did a good job. I looked really holy. And we got the nightgown right back to Aunt Ida. No damage to it. Folded nice, washed and ironed and folded up nice in its box, wrapped in the white tissue paper. I never asked anybody. And it didn't say when I found her obituary in the paper, but I bet she was buried in it. And when I think back on it, how clever my mother was to come up with that costume. Even if I probably did look more like the Mary on the miraculous medal than I did like the young Jewish girl, the mother of Jesus. But it's a sweet memory. The other memories we bring into our life at Christmas time are all the cards that come for us. The Christmas cards, I love them, I'm sure you do too, where people you don't talk to every much, but you know you love them, and at Christmas you get their card and you were remembered, and you just feel warm all over. You know, there weren't always Christmas cards. And maybe you know this or maybe you don't. They started in 1843 in London, England. Sir Henry Cole, who was the first director of the Victoria and Albert Museum, he was so busy that year, 1843, that he couldn't write his usual letters for the holidays to his friends. And so he hired an artist to draw a picture. And the artist drew a picture of a family celebrating the holidays together. He thought it was so beautiful that he printed it up and he sent it to a friend, to all his friends. And then he thought it was such a good idea. And it was so beautiful that he printed 1,000 of them. And he took them and he sold them. He sold them. It wasn't a big seller right at first. It took until 1870 for it to really catch on when they released the halfpenny stamp. And after that, it was so popular, he sold all 1,000 of those cards. And by 1880, well, they were warning the people of London, just like they sometimes issue warnings to us from the post office. Mail early. Mail early. Happy holidays to all of you. And if you like more stories, come to Friendship Village Community Center, Tales in the Village, the third Wednesday of the month, 7:30. Different storytellers, free to you.